So there's a lot of new functionality in Whitson Plus that was released over the weekend. The first thing to emphasize is how we've reorganized the navigation panel here to the left, such that it naturally follows this multi-phase RTA workflow that we recommend. So if you start at the top with the input data and you move your way to the bottom, you should be in really good shape. For those who have used Whitson Plus since the beginning, you'll see that all the PVT related modules or tabs have now been consolidated into one tab right here. So you have fluid definition, black hole table, and EOS models, everything here grouped in the same tab right here. And that makes sense because when we think about PVT, we should think about all these things. We should think about compositions, tables, and the thermodynamic models. A very, very exciting thing that we've added into this version of Whitson Plus is a way for you to graphically smooth the bottom hole pressures. That's called using custom bottom hole pressure. When you pick that, you can simply auto-fit the observed data, whether that observed data is measured or if it's actually calculated values with the software as well. So if you like to smooth out or graphically adjust this Hagedorn-Brown correlation, you can do that by either just auto-fitting here, and you can choose different sampling frequencies when that's relevant. In addition, if you'd like to add points, you click this add button here up to the right. Then you can actually click just between points and then move these points around, etc. Or of course delete all of them if you think that would be more appropriate. If you have points or too many points, you can take this point and then drag it to the left of the screen, and you'll remove that data point. So if you want to do analysis with this fit here, if you like, after you have been able to adjust it, you simply just click save, and then this data series can actually be picked as the data series for bottom hole pressures that you use in all the analysis that require bottom hole pressures. So that's analytical RTA, flow material balance, numerical RTA, and the numerical model. Especially when you're controlling the numerical models on bottom hole pressure, this feature can be extremely useful because if you work with very spiky bottom hole pressures, that tend to create a lot of noise in the predicted rates when you do that. So that's extremely powerful. For those of you who've done a lot of the input of the well data as well, you can see that the well data now has been a little bit cleaned up, a little bit less optionality, and a little bit cleaner. So that's something that we always work on to try to remove optionality and simplify people's life when that makes sense. The next thing to look at is the flow material balance. So there's a few new things there. The first thing is that you also here see we've consolidated the multi-phase flow material balance, the dry gas material balance, and the recovery factor analysis in one feature. So if you want to go from multi-phase to gas, so if you're dealing with the dry gas system, you can simply now just pick that from this drop-down menu right here. Else than that, the feature is working exactly the same as it's been in the past. However, there's one very useful feature here, I would say, which is this reset slope button. And because what can happen sometimes when you're dealing with this plot, if you move this outside of the slope, or outside of the plot, you've then kind of lost your slope, which is annoying. So you can click reset slope, and you get it back on your screen right here, and you're off to the races. In the recovery factor analysis, we made a few updates, the two most important ones being that you actually get the recovery factors multiplied with these oil in place numbers, such that you get an EUR for both oil, gas, and water displayed on the screen. In addition to that, there's a new toggle here up to next to the semilog, which is a nice toggle that essentially after you run the module, you can use to validate whether this OGR versus pressure trend makes sense. And what it does is that it just takes the previously so the actual historical GOR versus cum oil curve, and then it has just extrapolated that on the plot here. So if this is a continuously nice curve, and if you think it makes sense with how you would kind of visually see this cum GOR versus cum oil trend in the future, it's a nice additional way to kind of validate whether you've done this extrapolation piece right here correctly. Over to analytical RTA, we've done a few updates here. The first thing that you can see is that we have the reset slope button also here. So if I lose my slope, I can just click reset slope and I get it in the screen again. So that's very nice. The second thing is that we now have a lasso fit option. So if you would like to fit only a portion of the data that you like, you can now just click this portion of the data, and the software will automatically fit the slope, a best fit slope through that data. So if you think that's clean data. The other thing is if you're working with gas, now you can also include a geomechanical effect, a so-called matrix gamma. By default, it's set to 0, but if you like to add, for instance, any matrix gamma or any geomechanical effects, you can do that by simply inputting this number right here, and you will see that the points on the curve is changing. So typically you get a lower or a higher LFP and a shallower slope when you do that. So that's a couple of the new things with regards to the analytical RTA feature. And you can also see that the export, if you want to use these parameters in the numerical model, that export button is now here at the top of the screen because sometimes it was hard for people to find it down here. The next thing is related to the numerical RTA feature. What's nice with the numerical RTA feature now is that you have this option to exclude bottom hole pressures graphically. So then you can just use this include or exclude button right here. So if there are, for instance, these outlier data points right here, you can pick to exclude these. So when you can run the model again now, you'll not use these bottom hole pressures when you run the model, but you will simply exclude them and just do an interpolation exercise for the pressures for those two outlier points. So that's really powerful in that perspective. There's also a very nice feature here that allows you to pick which of the hydrocarbon phases that you like to create this diagnostic plot based on. So for all of you that know numerical RTA in detail, you know that you have to calculate a ratio based on the model rates and the observed rates. And these are for oil wells. Typically, they're using oil, but you should be able to make the exact same plot for gas rates. And in some cases, if you're dealing with a wet gas, for instance, maybe your gas rates is what you're most comfortable of using. If you're dealing with near critical fluids, maybe you'd like to see if you get the exact same result or close, no matter if you're using gas or oil. So that's very nice that you at least now can do this with both phases. And yet again, we move the export button right here up to the right because it was a little bit hard to find it here below the relative probability edits. The other thing that you can also see here is that in the template model, it's also possible to include your matrix gamma and fracture gamma here. So if you think that it's important to have kind of pressure-dependent permeabilities and these kind of things, you can include this here when you do the analytical or the numerical RTA. And that will also be, if you export that into the numerical model, you'll also be able to use those there. So that's very nice. The last thing that I thought I could just go through here when it comes to the numerical model view, there's a lot of new things here as well. A couple of the key things is that you now get your overview of not only the oil in place, but you also get the cum oil produced until the end of history in this case, which is here around 121 million barrels, and you also get the recovery factor until the end of time here just displayed on the screen. So it's a nice kind of visual summary of this. Very cool in this feature now is this opportunity where you can graphically add a forecast that's not constant. So you can now change between a constant bottom hole pressure, for instance. That's very similar to how it was before. But let's say I want to have it constant from 1,000. You can do that. Or if you like to have a parametric decline, you can just say, what's my initial? What do you want to be my final bottom hole pressure? Then I can just graphically add some kind of decline here such that it will hit this constant bottom hole pressure at different points in time, depending on what this decline is, which is really powerful, especially if you started to history match well performance early and you're still on a decline, then you can kind of at least provide a forecast of this decline versus time graphically, which is very time saving for a lot of people because before you had to do this exercise graphically. So you did that with the custom schedule, which you still can do, but it's at least personally, I would prefer to use this feature right here because it provides you with enough flexibility to do this exercise. A last thing that is at least myself when I use these features a lot myself, especially when you've added a forecast, it can also be still nice to be able to visualize just the historical portion of the data that you have, which in some cases is needed even after you've done the forecast exercise. So in the past, this has been a little bit annoying, but because if you want to do that, you would then have to rerun the model. The last thing that I'll go through and show I thought today was to show a new interface. So if you want to do kind of type well exercises or DCA exercises with monthly data, you can now just export from EnerDeck and upload both the well attributes file and the production data file into the software in these two different windows and just click save. And you're off to the races on that. It's also a very nice feature now where you can go and export all the selected data in a project. You get a very nice summary file with not only inputted data for these wells, but also interpreted data for these wells. So whether that's linear flow parameters, OIPs, XFs, permeabilities, etc., etc. So you can use this in a very correlatable exercise if you would like to do that. There's of course other things that I could have mentioned in this little update, but I'll keep it at that, and hopefully you find something interesting. If you and hopefully useful as well. If you like to have a more detailed run through of this on maybe some of your old data sets, feel free to reach out to me or any of my colleagues, and we'll take you on a little tour, and hopefully we can make your life even more seamless and easier when it comes to evaluating these from a RTA perspective.